there's three price scenarios that I'm still taking a look at when it comes to Theta in an event where maybe there is a fully fledged type of altcoin season. Even though nothing I say is financial advice, the first scenario I want to take a look at is the idea of $40. Now, this right here is a 50x from here, and market cap at that point would be 40 billion. Now, some people may be thinking, okay, but what are the good fundamentals about Theta? Like, what's so good about it, right? Now, let me explain real quick why I'm such a fan of Theta. Like, for instance, if we take a look at Theta, what is it? The Theta network is a blockchain-powered decentralized cloud for AI, media, and as well as entertainment. However, I actually think that it could be viewed as a dual network, so to speak, because there is the Theta blockchain and as well as the Theta Edge network. Now, let me explain this real quick. Like, for instance, if we take a look at the Theta Edge network, it provides GPU, which stands for graphic processing unit, but besides that, again, it provides GPU compute power for in cases like AI, video, and as well as rendering. Why do I think it's a pretty good thing? It's because the AI market is predicted to be worth nearly $2 trillion by 2030, according to Grandview Research. And what I feel like sometimes when people, that I ask about Theta, they don't really think about it as really having an aspect of AI. But again, I think this is a pretty cool touch, and I think it's pretty awesome nonetheless, because we've seen typically when there's a pretty good sentiment when it comes to just the space overall, and also more specifically, I would say altcoins, sometimes we do see some AI projects kind of go along with the ride. So I do like this aspect when it comes to Theta. Not to mention, if we now take a look at the Theta blockchain, now it's an EVM. EVM stands for Ethereum Virtual Machine, by the way, but again, it's an EVM-compatible multi-blockchain network that supports Turing-complete smart contracts. However, also on top of that, Theta is focused on decentralized video on demand, and quite essentially it does allow users to add decentralized video to any website or application. So I find all of this pretty interesting nonetheless. And if we take a look at it, even if we take a look at kind of the dual token design here, let me explain real quick, because of course there's a Theta token, right, which I've been talking about throughout this whole video, but there's also something called T-Fuel. Now that stands for basically Theta Fuel. It's kind of basically the operational token of the Theta protocol. In a sense, it's kind of viewed as like a gas token, so to speak. But again, of course, I'm more so focused on the Theta token. But of course, I have to mention that nonetheless. However, if we take a look at, for instance, right, kind of the historical partnerships that we've seen when it comes to Theta, we take a look at American Idol, which is, of course, very popular. We take a look at Lionsgate, also even Katy Perry, and also even NASA as well. So I think it's pretty cool. Now, some people may be wondering, okay, why are they focused on more so on kind of the media side? Well, it's because, again, arguably, if we take a look at Theta, it is heavily focused on media and entertainment. So I think the partnerships are pretty cool in that sense. Not to mention as well, we take a look at, the media and entertainment market size, right? According to Mordor Intelligence, it's expected to reach over $40 billion by 2029. So I don't think it's such a bad thing in the grand scheme of things. Not to mention, again, we take a look at Theta, of course, as an aspect of AI, but also, actually, Theta has kind of a little bit of a focus, arguably, in my opinion, when it comes to NFTs. Now, I get it. A lot of the hype when it comes to NFTs kind of disappeared a little bit ever since 2021, or should I say after that bull run. But I still kind of like the narrative of it, nonetheless, because according to Grandview Research, the NFT market is predicted to reach over $200 billion by 2030. So, I mean, that's pretty massive, I think, in the grand scheme of things. If it were to even happen, that figure, I mean, it would be very impressive. So I just kind of feel like overall, I do like the aspects when it comes to Theta. I feel like there's many avenues that could hypothetically somewhat elevate it fundamentally, because if, let's say, AI, for whatever reason, people don't really think about that when it comes to Theta, of course, they have media, they have entertainment, they have kind of a little bit of an aspect of NFTs. So it still has kind of, these pathways, the way I take a look at it. As opposed to, let's say, a project is only focused on one thing and one thing only. If that thing maybe doesn't really do well or take off, then what happens, right? But then in this one, there's kind of these avenues, so I do like that when it comes to Theta. And overall, if, let's say, again, maybe there is a scenario where it does reach the price of $40, it would not surprise me in an event where there is, a fully fledged type of altcoin season. Now, the second scenario I want to take a look at is $45. Now, at that point, market cap, considering current circulating supply, would be 45 billion, which actually, give or take, is around $40 billion less than Dogecoin's all-time high market cap, and that was like Dogecoin back in 2021. So, I don't find this as something maybe too ridiculous. However, of course, only time will tell. But when I consider kind of like, I would say, degree that the project is viewed as, right? This would not be something that would surprise me too much. Now, $45 is a 56.25x from here. So again, 56 and a quarter x from here, basically. And again, the way I view it is that what is something like, let's say, Bitcoin or Ethereum going to do in the next 6 months, arguably? Like if Bitcoin went to 300 grand, less than a 3x from here. Ethereum went to 10 grand, also less than a 3x from here. Now, there's no guarantees when it comes to this, in my perspective, but it's not something that necessarily excites me. That's the way I view it. However, even besides that, the third and final scenario that I want to take a look at is the idea of maybe $50. A 62.5x from here, market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, would be actually exactly 50 billion. And I actually want to mention this in the last section to just kind of make things more simple. But if we take a look at the current circulating supply of Theta, it's actually exactly 1 billion. Now, again, it's not like it really matters in the grand scheme of things, but it's very simple. It looks like very, I would say, kind of something that is, sometimes we see a project, it's like 26.8 something billion or something like that, right? But again, it doesn't really matter too much in the grand scheme of things, but I just kind of like that nonetheless when it comes to Theta. I just think it's a pretty cool aspect. But again, why wouldn't $50 maybe surprise me? It's because currently there's over 600 million crypto owners, and this is supposedly more than ever before in history. Why would this figure be impressive? It's because even though it's not 10% of the world's population, right, that figure, but then at the same time, we have to consider how the number has kind of increased ever since 2021. During the peak of the 2021 bull run, there was around 300 million crypto owners. So now there's over 600 million. That's a big difference. That's pretty much double. And we have this like currently, right? It's not like Bitcoin has reached 200 grand or 250 or something like that. And we already kind of see that. This is something that I'm very excited with, or should I say excited for, because if let's say Bitcoin reached those heights and let's say the altcoin space really kind of takes off in a massive way, kind of like back in 2021 maybe, but let's say arguably better, who knows? Would the amount of crypto owners at that point stay the same, or would there be more? If there was more, it wouldn't surprise me. However, we also have to take a look at kind of the sentiment for the Bitcoin ETF, the Ethereum ETF. Don't get me wrong. I like, the ETFs when it comes to that, and I'm not necessarily saying I want to get into Ethereum or Bitcoin, but I think it can't be denied that, I think arguably that is kind of positive for the whole space overall in terms of the kind of, I would say, recognition. So for me, I like the fact there's a lot better actually this time around when compared to back in 2021. However, only time will tell. But some people may be wondering, right? Okay, how soon? Now, I don't think there is a way for me to know exactly because I do not know the future, but at least I can take a look at the past and maybe learn some clues from there. Because, for instance, usually altcoins as a worst case scenario peak around 18 months after a Bitcoin halving event. So if we consider 18 months from the last Bitcoin halving event, right? We add 18 months, should I say, on top of the last Bitcoin halving event back in April 2024. That's October of this year, so in 2025. We're not in October yet. I get it. Some people may be thinking, okay, that may not necessarily be an accurate timeline. And I do agree with that because that is based off history. But again, we're not in October yet. And let's say we are even in October. If let's say it happens a little bit later, like November, December, Q1 of next year, whatever the timeline is, I have no control over that. Like I cannot demand this to do that or whatever. However, the only thing I can control is myself. So for me, I'm just going to keep things simple by just doing what I've been doing throughout this entire time anyways, and that's dollar cost averaging, holding, and just waiting. That's it. I'm just waiting for a moment in time. And that's pretty much it. I'm not trying to find the perfect moment. I'm just preparing for a moment, if that kind of makes sense. But besides all that, I'm still a fan when it comes to Theta. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Greatly appreciate it. It's been Lee the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.